In a surprising twist that has caught both political analysts and business leaders off guard, President Trump's administration has signaled a willingness to drop tariffs against Canada's key exports. This unexpected move comes after years of heated rhetoric and escalating trade disputes between the two neighboring countries, which had left many industries in a state of uncertainty. The announcement marks a significant shift from President Trump's usual protectionist policies, which have often prioritized American industries at the expense of international partners. For months, the administration had doubled down on tariffs, arguing they were necessary to protect American jobs and manufacturing. Now, this reversal suggests a new willingness to negotiate and perhaps even collaborate more closely with Canada. This decision comes after months of mounting trade tensions and a bold $60 billion self-sufficiency plan unveiled by Canada. The plan, which aims to reduce the nation's economic reliance on the U.S., includes investments in domestic manufacturing, technology, and energy independence. Canadian leaders have framed it as a necessary step to protect their economy from unpredictable U.S. policy shifts. Canada's strategic move has forced the U.S. to reconsider its leverage in the relationship, acknowledging that Canada is prepared to chart its own economic course if needed. Behind closed doors, economic advisors on both sides are scrambling to assess the long-term impacts of these changes, weighing the risks and opportunities that could arise from a new era in North American trade. The stakes are high for both countries. The outcome could affect thousands of jobs, influence consumer prices, and even reshape the structure of the North American economy. Industries from agriculture to automotive manufacturing are watching closely, as any changes in tariffs or trade agreements could have ripple effects across supply chains and local communities. In the coming weeks, negotiators will work to determine whether this moment leads to a renewed spirit of partnership or signals the beginning of a more permanent economic separation. The decisions made now could set the tone for cross-border relations for years to come, affecting everything from trade flows to diplomatic ties. As the situation continues to evolve, one thing is clear. The implications for both nations are significant, and the world is watching closely to see how this high-stakes economic drama will unfold. The trade standoff between the United States and Canada erupted in February 2025, when President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on a wide range of Canadian goods. The move sent shockwaves through both countries as industries and consumers braced for the economic fallout. The White House justified the decision by pointing to national security concerns, specifically highlighting the ongoing issue of illegal drug flow across the border. Officials argued that the tariffs would pressure Canada to take stronger action against smuggling operations and cross-border crime. This rationale was unusual, as tariffs are typically used to address trade imbalances or protect domestic industries, not as a tool for law enforcement. By linking economic penalties to border security and the fight against narcotics, the administration set a new precedent in trade policy. The administration's approach blurred the lines between economic policy and national security, bypassing traditional trade justifications. This strategy was met with skepticism from economists and legal experts who questioned its effectiveness and legality. The tariffs were implemented under the broader America First trade philosophy, which prioritized U.S. interests above all else. President Trump invoked the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a rarely used law that grants the president sweeping authority to regulate commerce in response to national emergencies. In response, Congress quickly mobilized, with lawmakers from both parties voicing concerns about the economic impact on American businesses and consumers. A bipartisan coalition introduced legislation aimed at blocking the tariffs, arguing that the measures would do more harm than good. Despite these efforts, the proposed legislation stalled in the House of Representatives, leaving the tariffs in place. The impasse deepened tensions between the U.S. and Canada, straining diplomatic relations and fueling uncertainty in the business community. For Canada, the tariffs were a wake-up call. Rather than capitulate, Canadian leaders and businesses began to rethink their economic strategies, seeking new markets and diversifying supply chains to reduce dependence on the U.S. The imposition of tariffs marked a turning point, setting the stage for a prolonged standoff and forcing both nations to reconsider their roles in the global economy. The world watched closely as the situation unfolded, knowing that the outcome could reshape North American trade for years to come. In a bold response to sweeping U.S. tariffs, Canada unveiled an ambitious $60 billion self-sufficiency plan, marking one of the largest economic initiatives in its modern history. The government's goal is clear: to chart a new course toward economic independence and reduce the nation's vulnerability to external shocks. This plan is not just a reaction, but a statement of intent. Canada is determined to take control of its economic destiny. The initiative is designed to dramatically reduce reliance on the U.S. by ramping up domestic production in critical sectors like manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. Billions are being invested in modernizing factories, supporting Canadian farmers, and fostering innovation in homegrown industries. The hope is to create a robust, self-sustaining economy that can weather global uncertainties and trade disputes. The sheer scale and speed of the plan caught the U.S. off guard. American policymakers and business leaders were surprised by Canada's willingness to invest so heavily in its own future, signaling a fundamental long-term shift in the country's economic strategy. By building a parallel economic ecosystem, Canada is directly challenging the deeply integrated North American supply chains that have defined cross-border trade for decades. This move could reshape how goods, services, and capital flow between the two countries, forcing both sides to rethink their economic relationship. For U.S. businesses, the prospect of losing access to the lucrative Canadian market is a wake-up call. Many American companies now face uncertainty, as contracts are renegotiated and supply routes are redrawn. The pressure is mounting on U.S. policymakers to reconsider the tariffs and seek a resolution. What began as a trade dispute has now evolved into a high-stakes, long-term competition for economic influence and security. Both nations are maneuvering carefully, aware that the outcome will shape their futures for years to come. With this strategic move, Canada has created new leverage at the negotiating table, fundamentally reshaping the power dynamic in the ongoing trade dispute. The country's leaders are projecting confidence, determined to defend Canadian interests. But the stakes are high. The $60 billion plan threatens to unravel the economic interdependence that has long benefited both nations, raising questions about the future of North American prosperity and cooperation. Tariffs disrupted the North American economy, impacting businesses and consumers alike. Canadian exports became more expensive, while U.S. manufacturers faced higher raw material costs. This uncertainty affected corporate planning and investment, leading to job losses and economic slowdown. Consumers faced higher prices, contributing to inflation and reducing purchasing power. Businesses had to reorganize supply chains, increasing costs and eroding competitive advantages. The tariffs, intended to protect the U.S. economy, undermined its efficiency and interconnectedness. The economic friction created by tariffs has had widespread negative effects. As tariffs' economic impact grew, the dispute moved to political and legal arenas, challenging presidential power. Democrats in Congress, led by Senator Tim Kaine, pushed to terminate the tariffs, using emergency powers provisions. However, House Republicans blocked these efforts, maintaining the tariffs. The Supreme Court is fast-tracking a legal challenge to the president's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. A ruling against the president could reshape executive-legislative power balance. This complex conflict involves symbolic Senate votes, House procedural blocks, and a pivotal Supreme Court case. The outcome will have profound implications for U.S. trade policy and executive power. Farmers and automakers have been hit hard by the trade war, facing market losses and increased costs. U.S. farmers, especially in the Midwest, struggle with plummeting crop prices and higher production costs. The automotive industry, reliant on cross-border supply chains, faces billions in additional costs due to tariffs. Automakers absorb costs to keep car prices stable, but this strains profitability and investment. The tariffs have disrupted manufacturing processes, threatening jobs and competitiveness. Farmers and automakers are a powerful political force, pressuring lawmakers for resolution. The long-term damage could be irreversible without a swift resolution. Canada's self-sufficiency plan is a strategic pivot, challenging the U.S.-Canada economic relationship. By investing in domestic capacity, Canada signals a shift away from reliance on the U.S. This creates anxiety among American businesses, fearing loss of market access and revenue. The seamless integration of U.S. and Canadian economies is at risk. potentially weakening North American competitiveness. Canada's strategy exposes the downside of America's aggressive trade approach. The U.S. faces the possibility of a permanent strategic realignment with its key trading partner. The tariffs may have triggered a chain of events leading to a fragmented North American economy. The future of the U.S.-Canada relationship is uncertain, with key events shaping the outcome. President Trump's offer to withdraw tariffs could lead to de-escalation, but its sincerity is questioned. The Supreme Court decision on the president's tariff powers looms large, with potential to restore stability. Regardless of legal outcomes, Canada's self-sufficiency plan has altered the landscape. The U.S. must engage diplomatically to rebuild trust and remain a key player in Canada's economic future. A resolution could restore efficient supply chains and economic benefits for both nations. The next few months will determine if the historic partnership can be repaired, or if a new economic era begins.